Bam Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiara Banachari Yamuna Tiara Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiara Banachari Yamuna Tiara Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Hari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasoda Ranjana Yamuna Tiara Banachari Yamuna Tiara Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiara Banachari Yamuna Tiara Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiara Banachari Banachari. So we'll say the invocation first. You get a choice of invocations. You think in your mind which one you want it to be. Do you want it to be the first 4 words in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the first 4 words in the second canto, or the mantra that Dhruva Maharaj said in the forest? You think which one you want, and I guarantee that will be the one. Here it goes. Listen carefully. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The point was, and that is, whatever way we approach Krishna, we end up at Krishna. So today, we are reading from the 3rd canto, the 14th chapter, verse number 46. That's what's up there, yes? Okay, good. Yogair, hemeva, durvarṇaṁ, bhāvayiṣyanti, sādhavaḥ, nirvairā-ādibhiḥ, ātmānam, yac-chīlam, anuvartitum, yogair, hemeva, durvarṇaṁ, bhāvayiṣyanti, sādhavaḥ, nirvairā-ādibhir, ātmānam, yac-chīlam, anuvartitum, yogair, hemeva, durvarṇam, bhāvayiṣyanti, sādhavaḥ, nirvairā-ādibhir, ātmānam, yac-chīlam, anuvartitum, yogair, hemeva, durvarṇam, bhāvayiṣyanti, sādhavaḥ, nirvairādibhir, ātmānam, yac-chīlam, anuvartitum. Repeat. Ladies? Others? Word for word. Oh. Yogair, hemeva, durvarṇam. Yogair, by the rectifying process. Hema, gold. Eva, like. Durvarṇam, inferior quality. Bhāvayiṣyanti, will purify. Sādhavaḥ, saintly persons. Nirvairā-ādibhiḥ, by the practice of freedom from animosity, etc. ātmānam, the self. Yat, Whose? Śīlam, character. Anuvartitum, to follow in the footsteps. Śīlam is character. It's funny, sometimes when I try to write in the on the computer, Srimad Bhagavatam, it changes it to śīlam. So, the translation of that verse is, in order to follow in his footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying processes rectify gold of inferior quality. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Yoga practice, better hold this closer, the process of purifying one's existential identity is mainly based on self-control. Without self-control, one cannot practice freedom from animosity. In the conditioned state, every living being is envious of another living being. But in the liberated state, there is an absence of animosity. Prahlāda Mahārāja was tortured by his father in so many ways. Yet after the death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He did not ask any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. So, we see some important things here in this verse. It mentions about following in the footsteps. Everybody follows in some people's footsteps. But the saintly persons follow in the footsteps of Prahlāda Mahārāja because he's practicing the freedom from animosity. And we'll talk a little bit about, as it comes down the chain of disciplic succession, Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam imam radharishi vidu, that this knowledge was imparted in disciplic succession, passed from master to disciple who becomes master, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. And according to time, place, and circumstances, how we practice the things may be a little different. Just like where Gaurahari is from, at this time of year it's still winter, and the snowplow may be very useful, right? But it won't be of any use here because even on the coldest day you don't get snow. So we have to be involved in the processes that are according to this time, place, and circumstances. If Gaurahari shows up with a magnificent snowplow saying that this is great in Denmark in the winter, it doesn't mean it'll do any good here. So we follow in the footsteps. And one of the things that's interesting here is talking about being free from animosity. And one of the main things is self-control, which is important. Being free from animosity toward others or having self-control? Which one is? They're kind of co-relatives, because if you have self-control, it can be easier to be free of animosity of others. And if you're being free from animosity of others, it will be easier to have self-control. But as Krishna says, the minds of those who are irresolute is many-branched. If you don't know where you're going in life, it will be very difficult to get there. Is it not true? If I'm wandering this way and say, where are you going? Well, I don't know. Well, how will I get there then? I have to know the goal. So with the self-control, first we have to know what is self. Krishna explains the hierarchy of elements, that above this gross matter is the senses. So does that mean the senses are important? No, because above the senses is the mind. Above the mind is the intelligence. Above the intelligence is the soul. And above that is God. And our purpose is to link ourself up with God. So we use the intelligence to direct the mind, to engage the senses and the matter in Krishna's service. Does that work out better than just letting the mind become attracted? The senses become attracted to objects, and then the mind tells the intelligence how to fulfill that? Is that a better way? Which would be better? Which one do most people try? They try just following whatever comes up. You just follow whatever comes up. But the trouble is that won't lead you in the right direction. That's why Krishna talks in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita about Sankhya. What does Sankhya basically mean? Counting. We're adding up the cost to benefit ratio. The cost of letting my senses run wild is pretty high, and the benefit is negative. But if I can practice the self-control, and I can use the intelligence to direct my mind in the right direction, then I will have some success in spiritual life. So Prabhupada mentions that in the beginning. Without that, and because of that, every living being is envious of another living being. And this animosity is described as envy, which is the root cause of material existence. Because in the spiritual world, God is the supreme controller, and he's the supreme enjoyer. So we think, what if I'm the supreme controller and the supreme enjoyer? People try that, right? They play God, but it only works sometimes or never. Sometimes it seems to work for a while, just like Lord Brahma thought he tricked Krishna, but not really. It looked that way, but that wasn't the way it came out. So we see that Prahlāda is showing the example of this kind of person, that he was fixed just in his service to God. And we talk sometimes about the varnashram dharma and get very into the intricacies, but the main point of it is it's not trade school, but it's training people that whatever you do it as a service to God and to other people. And that way automatically society is better. If you're working at the shop and you're trying to serve people nicely and you're trying to offer the result to Krishna, just like when I say, do liter pani, he says, do liter pani, Srimati Radharani. So he does it nicely with a smile and mentions Srimati Radharani. This is the point, is that we're supposed to be serving others and ultimately to be serving God. So we follow the examples that are set here and follow in the footsteps. And of course, we relate to all of the great devotees, but the more recent ones are going to be more relative to our time, place, and circumstances. We can't look at what they did in the Treta Yuga because we're not in the Treta Yuga. It's like asking Gaur Hari how to use a snowplow. That's not going to be useful here. You don't have snow. So we have to look according to this time, place, and circumstances. Krishna gave us some instructions when he was here in the Bhagavad Gita. He gave us verses to show the attitude to have our life properly. Because the idea is if we want to be of service to Krishna, we want to be dear to Krishna. We say, I'll serve you, Krishna, but I don't want to do what you want. It doesn't make sense. So we have to understand some of these verses, actually all of them, But the verse that relates most to this, when we're talking about practicing freedom from animosity, Krishna explains in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the verses, say, 13 to 20, talk about things that will make you dear to Krishna. Would that be useful, or should we talk about something else? That would be like the highest, they say, what is the highest and best use of my time, or a piece of property, what is the highest? That would be the highest and best use of our time, is to understand what would make us dear to Krishna. Because if we understand that, our life becomes perfect. Oh, but time is up, sorry. Oh no, it's not up. So, Krishna says in the 13th and 14th chapters, a verse, I think it starts out with, Advaishta sarva bhutanam maitreya karuna evacha. He says, one who is not envious, but a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, who is free from false ego, who is equal in happiness and distress, who is always satisfied, engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence in agreement with me, such a person is very dear to me. And the next verse he mentions that he for whom no one is put into difficulty and is not disturbed by anxiety or anyone else is very dear to me. That's kind of how Prahlāda was acting, wasn't it? He wasn't disturbed by them, and he didn't think, I'll get you later. He didn't say, okay, you're going to torture me now, and you're going to pay for that. He just accepted it. That goes along pretty well with these verses in Bhagavad Gita. Maybe Prahlāda was in touch. Maybe he was in agreement with Krishna. So let's sort of unpack those meanings, because they seem to do quite well in this verse here. And one of the things the verse is bringing up, Prabhupada is saying, is self-control, because we have to be able to be willing to do the work. And the work there is, they're talking about gold. Gold is alloyed. Pure gold is like 24 karat. And if it's only 8 or 12%, it's not pure, right? So what do they do to make it pure, unalloyed? Does anyone know? You what? Yes, you heat it up. Tapa means like heating. Yes, they melt it, and you take the impurities out. Now, for us, the impurities are anarthas. Probably none of you have the impurity of lust, or animosity, or greed, or anger. Maybe some of you have a little bit of it, right? But we have to be willing to burn these things out. And in the beginning, we have to at least know what our anarthas are. Because quite often, people don't identify exactly what their anarthas are. And Krishna consciousness sets us up in such a way that we won't stumble over the anarthas. We set in a practice that saves us from that. Let's take one thing, an example. Some people have a problem with drinking alcohol, and they drank 20 drinks the night before. They said, no problem. Tomorrow I'll only have one. One shouldn't be too bad, right? But the trouble is, once they have one, then they have to have 2 and 3 and 4. It's like jumping off the building and saying, well, I'll only go part way. So they don't realize exactly what the problem is. Because the modes of nature, once you're in that mode of nature, then you're going to be influenced by it. So when we say no intoxication, that sort of diminishes the chances of getting drunk, doesn't it? You'd think 1, 2, 3, 4, but none, that makes it easy. So if we don't identify what the anarthas are and what the process is, it may be very difficult to be free from them. So Krishna is saying one who is not envious, but he's a kind friend to all living entities. Because if you're envious, you can't be a kind friend. And if you're a kind friend, then you're not going to be envious. So each of those two helps or hurts the other. If you're envious, you don't want to be a friend. I always tell people, you shouldn't be threatened if somebody's better at you than in something. Unless it's gunfighting and they're chasing you with one. Then you should be threatened. But if somebody's a better pujari than me, or gives a better class, or can distribute books better than me, should I be envious of that? Is it costing me money? Is it threatening my life? If they're chasing me with an automatic weapon, and they happen to be the state champion, now I should be threatened. But if we're not envious, we're not worried that other people have those. We think, how can we be a friend? We don't try to prove how great we are in so many fields. We try to prove that we can be a kind friend. And that they don't think ourselves a proprietor. Because you may own $1 billion worth of property, but when you die, you only get to take 24% with you, right? Is that it? No? What is it, 30 or 12? How much you take with you? None? Wow. Does that sound fair? But once it's up, right? So we don't think ourselves a proprietor. It all belongs to Krishna. We're free from false ego, because the false ego is thinking, I am this body. I belong to this nation. And that's why I fight other people, because they look different than me. And equal in happiness and distress. Well, how can we be equal in happiness and distress? Because if we want Krishna's happiness, if it causes us distress, that's fine. And if our happiness causes Krishna distress, then we give it up because we're concerned with the happiness of Krishna. Look at the gopis. They were willing to give the dust from their head to Krishna to cure a headache. They didn't care what the result would be from themselves. It's like we're always trying to get our way. We want everything to go our way. Because the next verse says someone who is always satisfied. So we want to be always satisfied. Is there a prayer that we can say that everything will turn out the way we want it to? Is there? There is. You want to hear it? You say, Krishna, today my wish is that everything turns out the way that you arrange it to turn out. Then I get my wish. I'm always satisfied if I'm satisfied with whatever Krishna arranges. Because if I try to fight Krishna on what he arranges, there is some chance that I may not be successful. Of course, that chance is 100%. But if I align myself, like we see so many doves, so here the dovetail connects with the dove perfectly. So if my desires connect with Krishna, then I will always be satisfied. So that's how to be satisfied. And going along with that, the next part of the verse says, engaged in devotional service with determination. What does determination mean? Well, it kind of goes back to the Sankhya. When someone's on a jury, they tell the 12 members to go and discuss it and come to a determination. Determination doesn't mean you think, I think I'll do that. It means that you've used the Sankhya. I've realized that if I do this, engage in devotional service, the results will be positive. I will be free from the negative things, and I have determined or decided. I've decided based on facts that I have resolved, deliberated. This is why Krishna uses in the last verse of the 3rd chapter that we can conquer the lust by deliberate spiritual intelligence. We again add up the cost to value ratio. If I find some random person and have illicit sex, or if instead I go to the temple and I worship Krishna and I surrender my life, what will be the different kind of result? Well, it will be a vastly different result. But we should determine the result of things so we won't know it. Someone says, oh, here's a drug. Oh, I'll try that. Is that what you should do? Don't you need to find out what it is first? Oh, it's a vitamin. Okay, good. I'll take that. Oh, it's the fentanyl which kills people. No, maybe I better not take that. So we have to have added up, deliberated on what is the proper action and what isn't. That is why we need to be careful about taking action. If we don't know what action to take, what action do we take? None, until we're sure which way to go. If you're not sure which way the go-shall is, do you just keep walking that way, or do you find out first? So this is the point here, practicing with determination, that we have determined that this is the best thing to do, and I should stay on this course and not divert to something else. Diverting is one thing, deviating is something worse. Diverting, you kind of wander out. Deviating, you go somewhere different. So that's what the determination is. We have determined that this is what we want. And of course, all of these qualities come together to make it possible, because we are the kind friend, we're not in animosity, we're accepting the happiness and distress that come, we're always satisfied. And then, as Krishna says, our mind and intelligence are in agreement with him. We see what Krishna wants, and we tell our mind, okay, Krishna wants me to chant on these beads. So what do? I chant on them. Krishna wants me to go to the Mangal Artik, so I use the intelligence to find out where the temple is and how to get there. We don't just wander off into the world and take whatever comes. We act with that determination. We've made a determination as to what is the best action to take. So we see that these activities here being described by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, they sound very good, but if you go out on the average street, you may not find lots of people who practice these real well. We do have some points in history where these things come along. Like Krishna gave these teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, and we follow in those footsteps. But then what happened? Lord Chaitanya came for this age to be the Yuga avatar. What we do for this time and place. Not what we do in Denmark and Sweden in the winter. When it doesn't snow here, we do what they've engaged us to do. So Lord Chaitanya brings his associates to show us in this age how to develop devotional service, how our mind and intelligence can be in agreement with Krishna, how we can practice devotional service with determination, and how we can be free from animosity. So Lord Chaitanya sent the people out to chant Hare Krishna and get others to chant Hare Krishna. And of course, for understanding what our mind and intelligence in agreement with Krishna, even though we are trying to be a kind friend to all living entities, we still treat people differently. Just like the doctor. He is concerned with everybody's health, but depending on their diagnosis, he gives a different medicine. So Lord Chaitanya directed many people to go out and chant Hare Krishna, tell other people to chant Hare Krishna, and to worship Krishna, and get those other people to also pass it to others. So Nityananda, Krishna's first expansion, Balaram, and Haridas Thakur, at the order of Chaitanya, they would go out and tell people to chant the holy names. Lord Chaitanya asked them to knock on every door in Navadvip. And when they went to the doors in Navadvip, they found some people who were in search of knowledge of the absolute truth, and they wanted to chant. They found some people who were inquisitive. Some people were in distress, and some people were in need of money. But of course, that wasn't everyone. Some people they found were the Naradamas. We just do what everyone else does, right? It's like those animals that run towards the ocean. They all run off a cliff. Well, everyone else is doing it. Must be a good idea. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. I went in the bathroom once and it said, 500 trillion flies can't be wrong, eat stool. Is that a proper conclusion? But by the numbers, they outnumber us, but we don't follow their example. Otherwise, we're eating stool. So they found that some of them were mudas, they just wanted to work hard. Some people had lots of knowledge, it was stolen by illusion. And some people were out and out demoniac, they were just angry at everything. And some people were suspicious. Why are you knocking on my door? You're just coming to canvass to steal something later. So we have to do this in preaching to people too. The one girl in South Africa, the cruise ship came to South Africa and the people had taken the plane from America and the parents had brought their children and they said they have a second home in Laguna Beach. Now in Laguna Beach, you can't touch anything for less than say $2.5 million, which multiply that by 80 for the rupee or 84. How much would that be? That would be about $1 billion. How many rupees would that be? 2.5 million times 80 would be something like 20 billion rupees. That's a lot of money, right? And that's their second home. So she was preaching to them, if you're in need of money, you just come to Krishna. But we don't need money. They don't think about it. You think the people like Elon Musk or Mukesh Ambani are wondering if they need some extra money? Well, they're trying harder to get more money, but they're not worried about if they run out. Maybe they are. But you have to approach the people differently according to their needs. So there was a big commotion going on. And Nityananda asked, what's going on there? People said, oh, that is Jagai and Madai. You don't want to talk to them. They are drunkards. They're meat eaters. If you criticize them, they'll rape your wife and burn your house and beat you. So Nityananda went away. He didn't want to be bothered. It wasn't convenient. Because after all, the principle is, I do devotional service if it's convenient. Is that it? Is that what we call pure bhakti? No, that isn't it. So they went over anyway. And needless to say, these drunk people were not very happy. They were not free from animosity. So they chased them, but they were too fat and too drunk, so they couldn't catch them. And Haridas, of course, says, a fine mess you got us into next time. So the next day they saw them. And that day they avoided them, right? No, Nityananda tried again. And when Madai hit Nityananda with a pot, did Nityananda say, okay, I'm going to get you now? He said, no, I don't care about my body. I only care about your spiritual life. But Lord Chaitanya was not happy. He came with the disc, and he was going to sever his head. But Lord Nityananda said, no, if they agree to stop their sinful ways, in this age we don't kill the demons, we just kill the demoniac tendencies. And so they surrendered because Lord Nityananda was this way. We come down to the present day. Prabhupada went to America, and he said in the beginning, I didn't introduce regulative principles. I just engaged people in the chanting. It's just like he would tell people, why don't you come to the temple and just watch what we do? You get people started easy. Like if people come to a program, the best goal to have is a simple goal, like make them feel like they want to come back next time. Don't tell them about how they need to accept the order of sannyas and never have sense gratification again. You don't want to give the end goal. If someone's selling a product, the first thing you say is, you need to buy a bunch of this. You don't say that. You try to solve the objections and see what their needs are first. And this is the way Prabhupada showed. And by showing that he's free from animosity and a kind friend, other people want to follow the same thing. We went all over the world to start temples and do things because Prabhupada had this dedication and we wanted to follow in them. So this is a big part to start here, is that to be a kind friend to all living entities and to be free from animosity. And we have to practice self-control to have these things. So Prabhupada said we would show our love for him by how willing we are to cooperate with others, which means I force you to do it my way, and then we're all cooperating. This is why if you see in a temple, if they're doing something successful, even if it's something different than how you would do it, if they're successful, it's bona fide and they're encouraged to do it, then you encourage them to keep doing it. You don't always want to say that it's wrong. Some people object to everything. Why is the green cushion here instead of there? And then you move it. Well, why is it here now? Some people object to everything. What is the point? The point is we need to be free from animosity, not objecting to everything. So this is the point. By practicing this self-control, we cooperate. And how do we cooperate? We're a kind friend to others. We start by having our own self-interest, our own spiritual life in order. Because if I don't have Krishna consciousness, we can't give it. If Satchitanoy and I were going to teach a class on sewing deity outfits, would it be useful? No, because we don't know how to do it. So if you can't give something, this is why if you're not an expert in some field outside of Krishna consciousness, then don't go on Facebook and put expert opinions when you're not one. If you don't have it, you can't give it away. If you have some Krishna consciousness, people will want it. And so the first thing you do is make yourself Krishna conscious, and then you make sure your temple and your community is benefiting by your association, and make sure that you're a friend to people. Jayapataka Swami said in the Bhakti Vriksha groups, the people want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. What if I say, oh, I see you're having a difficulty. You know, I've been studying this Bhagavad Gita for a few years now, a little more than 55, but you don't have to say that. And let's look in here together and see if there's something that can help you in your situation. Would that be more palatable? Or if I say, listen, I've been reading this book for 55 years. You need to shut your mouth and open your ears and listen to everything I tell you. Even if it's true, it's not very palatable. If I say, because you're stupid and incapable of taking care of yourself, I'm going to give you 1,000 rupees. You'll probably refuse the 1,000 rupees because I'm presenting it in such a way that something nice becomes unpalatable. We have to remember the austerity of speech. It has to be truthful, pleasing, beneficial, not agitating to others, and based on knowledge. You know, the Rotary Club used that as their motto. And if the Rotary Club uses it as a motto and it comes from our Bhagavad Gita, it might be a good idea for us to use that. So then, Prabhupada has some ways where we can really cooperate together, because we each have our own spiritual life and we each have our temple, but those can be different degrees of selfishness. But right next door we have the Abhuta Mandir, the temple of the Vedic planetarium, and this is what we call our joint venture project. Everyone has their own spiritual life. They have their own temple and community. But something that we all do together is to make this temple of the Vedic planetarium happen. Lord Nityananda came and showed Jiva Goswami that there would be Abhuta Mandir, meaning exceedingly wonderful. And you may see many temples around that are wonderful, but exceedingly wonderful, this could be the only thing that's exceedingly wonderful. So even while we're taking care of our own spiritual life and our own families, at our own temple, we have to come up with ways and means to also either contribute ourselves or to encourage others to help finish this project. Because when it's finished, people will come from all over the world to see this. And it's great that they finished the Ayodhya. Someone said, oh, well, they finished that in 2 years with 4,000 crores. Well, here we've used less than 800 crores, 1/5, and so it's not finished. Now, of course, we don't even need 4,000 crores. But the difference is Rama is important, just like Prahlāda Mahārāja is important. But in this age, Lord Chaitanya is the most important because he tells us what we need to do for this day and age. Right? Just like if you go to this hospital, there may be many doctors, but if you have heart trouble, you need the heart doctor. So we're in the Kali Yuga, we need the Kali Yuga doctor, and that's Lord Chaitanya. And even many people in India are doing these big puja fire sacrifices, and that's like bringing the snowplow. It's not useful in this time and place. The useful in this time and place is what's taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what we need to do is bring people to here to see the temple of Vedic Planetarium, get people to understand Chaitanya's philosophy, and get them to understand, like Lord Chaitanya told the Tattvavadi Guru. Tattvavadi Guru says, well, in the Kali Yuga, we just do our Varnashram Dharma, off the result to Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya says, but the Shastras say that in the Kali Yuga, the best process is the hearing and chanting of the holy names. And the Tattvavadi Guru was embarrassed. But we see most of India is missing it. They think the main thing, we'll have the Brahmins come and we'll do a puja to the spiritual God to get a material benefit. Now, doesn't that sound kind of ridiculous? It's like when Dhruva Maharaj, when Krishna appeared to him, did he ask for the benefits? He says, it's like asking for broken glasses when I get jewels. Here's Krishna and can provide you. It's like the woman was carrying the burden and she keeps moving it. And Krishna says, how can I help you? Can you put the burden on my other shoulder? When Krishna's there, don't we ask him what he wants? And so Lord Chaitanya shows this. So our extreme way of cooperating and being the kind friend to all living entities and not having this envy is to do a project which is the benefit to ourselves, to a benefit to all temples, and to the whole world. So we can't pass off this temple of the Vedic Planetarium as someone else's project. We can't pass off the preaching as something someone else will do it. If everyone thinks someone else does it, then no one does it. So we have to realize that we follow these examples, but of course the examples of Lord Chaitanya and what Prabhupada did are the most relevant for us in this time and place. And the book distribution was important from Bhaktisiddhanta and from Prabhupada because in this they understand who Krishna is, they understand what the process for this age is, and they do the chanting of holy names, not lost in Treta Yuga fire sacrifices. Again, it's like having the snowplow here in Mayapur. It may be a beautiful piece of equipment, but it's the wrong time and place for it. So that Treta Yuga sacrifice may be great, but we only use it in the dikshas and in the weddings. It isn't our main process. So, are there any questions and comments here about being free from animosity? What is the town that envious people live in? Is it animosity? Because they have animosity as envy. So who wants to have envy? Do people enjoy having their envy? They do. They're mad that someone has something. So what if someone has something? Okay, they have a car. So they have a car, right? What if someone has a car or a motorcycle or 3 or 4 wives? Okay. What if they have a big house? Okay. What does it mean? What if we have Krishna? If Krishna is everything and we have Krishna, isn't that better? So who would like to comment on this? Yes? No question or comment? So how do we show our love for Prabhupada? By fighting with each other? Yes? Is there a microphone somewhere? Where'd the microphone go? It's hidden? Well, say it loud. Yes?
So, it is important to give this message to the people who have, trouble with difficulties. And we're speaking about animosity, envy.
Yes.
Lord Chaitanya Charitamrita said, first achar and then prachar.
Yes.
So we also have a statement in the Chaitanya Charitamrita to the one devotee, I think it's Sanatana Goswami, to Haridas Thakur, we had a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, some preach, but they don't behave good.
Mm-hmm.
Some behave good, but they don't preach. But you, my dear Lord, you do both, so you're a Paramahansa.
I don't do either one, so what should I do?
So that's what I'm saying. So the question is, we are not in that level, so what, Lord, so what are your thoughts in that?
Well, it's funny, like Tukaram says on Laguna Beach, sometimes he will glorify someone. Like Krishna even did this with Karna. He wanted to get Karna to switch sides, and he says, you really understand the intricacies of Dharma Shastra. So quite often it's good to give people encouragement even beyond the level that they're doing, because then they'll try to come up to that level. Because there may be a difference. It's like one of the offenses against the holy name is to maintain material desires. It doesn't mean having them, it means trying to maintain them. It's like if you have weeds growing and you go and water them and fertilize them. So if we have material desires or we have anarthas, but are we trying to maintain those, or are we trying to practice Krishna consciousness? The thing is, if it's a duplicity, it's one thing if we have some desires that we're overlooking to engage in Krishna's service, and we practice that, then it's just like if somebody was a criminal and they got out of jail for committing the crime and they have to see their parole officer. They may be thinking about doing a crime, but as long as they don't make the plans to do the crime or do another crime, they're not going back to jail. So we may have some desires, we may not be completely pure, but we're not using the mind to think up ways to do things improperly. So even if we're not totally there, as long as our behavior is following the Krishna conscious program, we can still set some kind of example. Not as good as someone who's a Mahabhagavata, but the thing is it helps to keep us in line. Because if the choice is, do we give a class if we're thinking about something impure, or do we give the class and realize, okay, I won't go engage in those activities? Which is better? Isn't it better to do the service and then stay at that level? After all, if we haven't done something wrong today, doesn't that make our life successful? If we're not at the level of pure devotion, but we're practicing, that's why I say we're practicing, because we're not perfect at it. So I guess we should have you give the class. I shouldn't be giving because neither my achar or prachar is perfect. But if we're engaging our mind to think how to do the practice properly instead of how not to do it, if our mind and intelligence are in agreement with Krishna, even if we have to work on keeping it there, isn't that still setting a good example? would you say? Or do you have to be pure before you say anything to anyone? And if it causes you to have to think about what you're going to do, right? Then that's good. But the thing is, if you make plans, you know, someone has a desire to do something, but they say, Krishna, please take away these material desires and let me engage in your service to you. That's different than someone who just thinks, you know what, it doesn't really matter what I do. Because like it read in the purport a couple days ago where Krishna said, Prabhupada said in the purport that Krishna appears when someone's sorry. Or sorry about activities we may have done in the past and that we may not have been born pure devotees and act in such a way today. After all, isn't it important what we do today? Or do we do all nonsense today because tomorrow I'm going to do really good? It's better a person thinks, you know what, today I'm going to practice as nicely as I can and we'll see about tomorrow, than thinking, well, you know what, I can do all kinds of nonsense today because tomorrow I have big plans. But the plans are just the mode of ignorance. It's what we do today that's important. So if doing some prachar helps us to keep our achar in order, and doing the achar helps us to do prachar, then we should use them as tools to help each other. Not think that since I'm so bad I don't try, or since I'm so bad I might as well not try. Does that make sense? Yes? Yes. 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 Maybe come closer because I can't hear from there. I couldn't hear it exactly. Where's the microphone? Yes. 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 It's a process. It's the process. It's just like when the sun first started coming up, you only get a little light. It's not like 1 minute you're impure and the next minute you're pure. As you're freed from those activities, then you start to get more determination. It's like a scale. As you're being freed from it, you start getting more determination. Well, as we surrender to Krishna, Krishna's name is pure, pravitram, it starts to purify us. And it says here, even by practicing the process of not being animosity, that starts doing the process. Because it, like said there, rectifying the gold, there's still some gold, but there's some impurities. It's not like you either have pure gold or just rock. You have gold, but you have some impurities. So as you take the impurities out, it becomes more pure. It's like that. It's not like turning on the light switch. It's more like the sun coming up. As it goes on, you become more purified and you become more determined. You're talking about a little determination or unshakable determination. So as you're relieved from those, a lot of it depends on the intention. What do we want to do next? Where am I going later today? Am I going to chant or read Bhagavad Gita? What is it that I'm intending to do? So even if someone had all kinds of bad things, but they surrender to Krishna, they do nicely. But if someone was surrendered to Krishna and they give up, then they get some bad reactions. But we see here, even when Diti made the mistakes, because she'd done good things, she's not totally Krishna says to Arjuna, for someone who's done good, they're never overcome by evil. So if you've done the devotional service, you always get those credits, but you may get some liabilities in the meantime. But it doesn't mean you lose out. And the difference is that the material assets and liabilities go away, whereas the spiritual assets stay with you. So it's not like turning on the switch, that you get nothing until you're pure, and then you get the determination. Without, it's like Prabhupada says, without faith and love, one cannot think of Krishna even for a moment. So the fact that you come to the temple and chant Krishna's name, pick up a beads, means there's some faith and love in Krishna. But Prabhupada says it's a long road from the beginning of Karma Yoga to the end of Bhakti Yoga. And that's just it. It's a road that we're traveling. So how far down the road have we gone? It's not like turning a switch. But we can be free very quickly if we want to be. Does that make sense? You just add more chanting. All right, we better quit there. Hare Krishna. So based on that information, you won't be bringing a snowplow to Mayapur? Right? It's useful in Denmark, right? Yes? Yes?